Nobody ever told you this. The greatest leap of your life won't arrive with applause or fireworks. It will arrive with silence, with confusion, with the strange, haunting sense that the life you've been living no longer fits your skin. One day you'll look around and realize what once felt solid now feels expired. That's not failure. That's the signal. The whisper that the quantum field has already begun shifting you. And here's the unnerving part. A quantum leap is not a choice. You don't decide it on paper. You don't walk toward it step by step. It happens beneath the surface, pulling you into alignment whether your mind approves or not. Just like an electron, you don't travel from the old orbit to the new one. You vanish from one state and reappear in another. No bridge, no logic, just collapse. And for those who resist, the silence only grows louder. If you've been feeling lost, disconnected, like your old desires have vanished into thin air, don't mistake it for emptiness. It's proof you're already mid-leap. But here's the secret. Most people abort the process because they don't know how to read the signals, how to hold presence when everything feels uncertain. In this video, I'm going to reveal those signals, the hidden signs that confirm your jump has started, and the one practice that guarantees you won't collapse back into the old self. They say the quantum field is not somewhere out there, but right here, woven into every breath, every thought, every emotion you carry. Imagine this. Infinite versions of yourself exist in superposition, like countless channels broadcasting at the same time. Which one you experience isn't random. It's the one you tune into through your frequency. Every morning you either replay the old self, repeating its tired broadcast, or you choose alignment with the new self, collapsing into a fresh timeline. The shift doesn't begin outside, it begins within. Think about how a radio works. There are countless songs floating in the air, but you only hear the one you're tuned into. Your identity works the same way. You don't actually create a new reality, you select one by resonance. Every jump, every quantum leap, is nothing more than a tuning process. The signal you broadcast determines what the field mirrors back. The secret isn't forcing reality, it's coherence. If the vibrational state is clear, the field has no option but to respond. Now picture waking up tomorrow. Before your feet hit the ground, you're already broadcasting. If your frequency is filled with fear, doubt, and the emotional echoes of yesterday, the quantum field collapses into the same old patterns. But if you wake up and shift, if you embody presence, if you feel neutral yet aligned, your timeline bends. It's like choosing between running outdated software or upgrading to a version that supports who you're becoming. Which one you run determines what unfolds. I remember a morning when I opened my eyes and looked around at everything I had built. The house, the career, the relationships, they were proof of years of effort. Yet none of it felt like mine anymore. That identity was expired like a suit that no longer fit. In that silence, I realized I wasn't failing. I was in the middle of a quantum jumping process. My old self had collapsed, and the new self was asking to be tuned in. That day marked the beginning of my leap. Here's the paradox. Your external world lags behind your internal broadcast. Just like a frequency change on the radio, there's a moment of static before the new song comes through. Most people panic at the static, thinking nothing is working. But that state of incoherence is the proof you're shifting. In fact, the moment of uncertainty is where the field holds all potential. Neutrality here isn't emptiness. It's the most powerful presence you can embody. So ask yourself, what signal are you sending right now? Are you broadcasting from the old self, desperate for certainty, or from the new self, holding coherence even in doubt? Every emotion is a signal, every feeling a choice. You don't manifest by begging. You manifest by broadcasting alignment long enough for the timeline to collapse into form. That's why some call it faith, others call it quantum mechanics. But at the core, it's the same law of resonance. And this is where it gets even more fascinating. Your body becomes the proof before your eyes ever see it. Because while the mind may argue, the field only listens to your state. If you hold the vibrational alignment, the leap becomes inevitable. But here's the twist. Most people never realize the body itself is the actual portal, and that opens the next layer of the journey. The mind is clever. It can trick you, justify anything, and build endless stories. But the body? The body doesn't lie. It vibrates the truth in every cell, carrying the broadcast frequency you're actually aligned with. That's why the quantum field doesn't respond to what you think, it responds to your state. If the old self still lives in your nervous system, you keep replaying its signal no matter how hard you try to think positive. The leap isn't mental, it's vibrational. Picture this: trying to download the latest software onto a computer stuck in survival mode. No matter how advanced the program is, the hardware crashes because it's overloaded with fear, stress, or unresolved emotion. That's exactly what happens when you attempt to manifest abundance while your nervous system is locked in fight or flight. The body becomes incoherent and the field mirrors that chaos back. Until you reset the system, the new self can't fully take form. But here's the hidden gift: your body is also the portal out. When you shift its state, even slightly, the entire field responds. You don't need proof outside, the proof is in how you feel inside. Neutrality, presence, coherence, these aren't just concepts. They're signals that collapse timelines. Every inhale, every exhale becomes a broadcast. If your breath is chaotic, your broadcast is chaotic. If your breath is aligned, your broadcast turns coherent. That's why ancient traditions always centered around breath. The yogis, the monks, the mystics, they all knew what science is now catching up to. Breath regulates state, and state regulates reality. A simple practice like the 5-2-7 method, inhale for 5, hold for 2, exhale for 7, tells your nervous system you're safe. Safety is the foundation for any quantum jump because only from safety can the new self fully emerge. Let's make this practical. Imagine waking up anxious, your chest tight, your thoughts racing. In that moment, instead of scrolling your phone or numbing yourself with coffee, pause. Place your hand on your heart. Inhale deeply for 5, hold for 2, release for 7. Do this 3 times and notice the shift. Your state softens. That shift is proof. The field listens to that signal more than any affirmation whispered only in your head. I remember once before an important leap, my mind screamed doubt, but my body carried a calm signal. I had been practicing presence so consistently that even in fear, my breath held coherence. And in that alignment, opportunities began appearing without force. Emails, phone calls, chance encounters that matched the new self I had been broadcasting. It was never the mind that convinced the field. It was the body's sustained vibrational presence. So while the old self will always try to argue its case through thoughts, the real test is simple. What state are you in right now? Because until the body is aligned, the mind's stories won't matter. And once the body is tuned, the field collapses around it with certainty. But then comes the next challenge. Learning how to shift your entire broadcast at will, almost like activating a secret protocol for the quantum leap. Every quantum leap begins with a broadcast shift. It's not a mystery, nor is it luck, it's a protocol. A process as precise as tuning an instrument. The first step is subtle but powerful, recognizing discomfort as a signal. When your state feels off, when emotions seem misaligned, that is not failure. It's proof you're standing at the edge of a shift. The old self resists because it knows its timeline is collapsing, and the new self is preparing to emerge. Step 2 is crucial. Interrupt the emotional loop of the old self. You don't need to justify fear, replay doubt, or analyze why you feel stuck. Every time you explain the old identity, you reinforce its frequency. Think of it like rewinding a song you no longer enjoy, yet insisting on listening to it again and again. The leap only begins when you choose coherence over explanation, alignment over the need to defend your past state. The third step, embody the new self before it arrives. This is where most people hesitate, waiting for proof before shifting. But the quantum field doesn't work on human deadlines. It responds to signals, not evidence. If you want abundance, you must feel abundant before it happens. If you want love, you must broadcast the state of being loved even when the room is silent. The field collapses reality around the frequency you sustain, not around your doubts. The fourth step is action. Real action. You cannot broadcast coherence while living the same old patterns. Acting as if is not pretending. It's aligning your behavior with the vibrational signal of your new self. A simple example: if the new self values health, eat and move like it already belongs to you. If the new self is abundant, invest time and energy like someone who trusts in flow. These choices are the proof you're already tuned in. Step 5 is perhaps the hardest: releasing the timeline. The human mind clings to calendars, deadlines, and expectations. But the quantum field does not follow a clock. It bends around sustained frequency, not schedules. The moment you demand results on your timeline, you slip back into doubt. The real mastery is neutrality, remaining present, coherent, and certain, even when the external hasn't caught up yet. That state of presence is what guarantees collapse into the new reality. I once followed this protocol during a season when everything in my life seemed uncertain. The discomfort was strong. I felt out of place in my own story. But instead of resisting, I let that state be my signal. I interrupted the old narratives, embodied the person I wanted to be, acted in alignment, and stopped checking the clock. Within weeks, synchronicities unfolded with precision. Opportunities, connections, and shifts I could never have planned. The leap became inevitable. And yet, even with this protocol clear, many still stumble. Why? Because doubt sneaks in, quiet but corrosive, collapsing the timeline back into the old self. Doubt feels logical, even responsible, but in truth, it shifts your broadcast and delays the leap. And this brings us to the greatest trap on the quantum path: the hidden power of doubt itself. Doubt is sneaky. It doesn't arrive shouting, it whispers. It tells you to check if it's working, to measure progress, to seek proof in the external before trusting the internal. But here's the paradox. The moment you demand proof, you collapse the frequency back to the old self. The quantum field doesn't follow curiosity laced with fear. It mirrors the state you embody. Doubt isn't evil, it's simply incoherence. And incoherence is enough to reset the leap. Think about a gardener planting a seed. Every day, instead of letting the soil do its work, he digs it up to see if it has sprouted. His impatience destroys the process, not because the seed lacked potential, but because it was never allowed to settle into alignment. Doubt works the same way. By checking, by second-guessing, by needing certainty now, you prevent the timeline from collapsing naturally. Presence requires trust that the unseen is already forming. The trap of doubt is also emotional. It disguises itself as responsibility, as being realistic. But what it really does is shift your vibrational broadcast. Imagine sending a clear signal one moment, then interrupting it with static the next. The quantum field can't stabilize around incoherence. Every doubt is a new signal, broadcasting fear instead of faith, survival instead of creation. And so the field mirrors back chaos, not because it's against you, but because you asked for it. I've lived through this trap myself. There was a time I began a quantum jump, feeling aligned, coherent, even certain. Then came the wait. Days without external proof. Fear whispered, "What if nothing changes?" I let doubt creep in, and immediately the signal shifted. Opportunities slowed. Synchronicities vanished. It wasn't that the new self wasn't real. It was that I collapsed back into the old self's frequency. That experience taught me the cost of doubt. But here's the hope. Doubt doesn't have to end the leap. It can deepen it. Every time you notice the urge to check, to measure, to question, that awareness itself is proof. You've caught the old self trying to reassert control. Instead of fighting doubt, use it as a signal to return to presence. Breathe, reset, choose coherence again. The leap is not ruined by doubt. It is delayed only as long as you feed it. So what do you do when doubt arrives? You stay neutral. You refuse to bargain with it. Instead of asking, "Is it working?" you remind yourself, "The field already heard me." You broadcast the state of certainty, even in silence. That is the discipline of a true quantum jumper, holding alignment when nothing seems to happen. That's when the field begins to bend, when timelines start to shift beneath your feet. And yet, even when you master doubt, another stage awaits. A strange and unsettling state that feels like emptiness, like life has slowed down, like you've stepped outside your own story. Many mistake it for regression, but in truth it is one of the most sacred stages of the entire quantum jumping process, the phase of the void. The void is unsettling. It feels like silence stretched too long, like you've stepped out of the rhythm of your own life. Conversations that once filled you now sound hollow. Routines that once grounded you lose their flavor, and even your ambitions feel distant. This phase is not chaos, nor is it stagnation. It's recalibration. In quantum terms, it's the neutral space where old timelines collapse before the new one fully takes form. It's the stillness before the leap. Think of it like tuning a radio. When you leave one station, there's a moment of static before the new frequency comes through. That static is not failure, it's proof you're shifting. The quantum field works the same way. When you no longer resonate with the old self, its broadcast fades, but the new self's song has not yet stabilized. The result feels like emptiness, but in truth, you are standing in pure potential. Presence here is the most powerful signal. The danger is misinterpretation. Many believe the void means they've regressed, that nothing is working. Fear whispers, "You've lost everything." But what's really happening is alignment. You are being stripped of the noise that once kept you bound to the old self. The vibrational collapse is uncomfortable because the mind craves certainty, but the field thrives in uncertainty. That liminal space is the proof you are in transition. I've walked through this void myself. There were seasons when friendships grew cold, opportunities paused, and my days felt like moving through fog. At first I thought I was failing, but in that emptiness, I learned presence. I sat in silence, breathing, journaling, listening without rushing to fix. Slowly, synchronicities began to appear, subtle signs that the new self was already forming. What I once feared as regression revealed itself as recalibration. Here's the paradox. The void is the most fertile ground, even though it feels barren. Every feeling of disconnection is actually clearing space for coherence. Every moment of stillness is a broadcast of neutrality, telling the field you are ready to embody alignment without needing constant proof. In this space, your nervous system resets, your emotions soften, and your broadcast becomes steady enough for the new timeline to collapse into reality. Practical tip. Instead of running from the void, lean into it. Use it as an invitation to cultivate presence. Wake up and practice breathwork. Sit in nature without distraction, or write letters to your new self describing who you are becoming. These actions are not to speed things up, but to sustain coherence in the static. The void isn't empty. It's vibrationally rich, filled with potential waiting for your certainty. And yet, as you learn to rest in the void, something magical begins to happen. Subtle signals start to appear. Coincidences, messages, opportunities that feel like whispers from the new self. These are not accidents. They are the language of the quantum field, responding to your sustained broadcast. And this opens the door to the next stage, the mysterious arrival of synchronicities. Synchronicities are the field's way of whispering back to you, "I heard your signal." They're not random. They're vibrational echoes of the new self you've been broadcasting. A phone call from someone you hadn't spoken to in years, a message appearing at the exact moment you needed clarity, or an opportunity that aligns perfectly with the feeling you've been sustaining. These events are the quantum field collapsing into coherence, matching your state with precision. It often begins small. Maybe you think of a person and they text you within minutes, or you've been imagining a certain shift in your career, and suddenly a chance meeting opens the exact door you needed. The old self would call it coincidence, but the new self recognizes it as proof of alignment. The field doesn't deliver randomly. It responds with synchronicity when your signal becomes stable enough for timelines to shift. I remember once, after weeks of practicing presence, I received an email out of nowhere. It was from a project I had abandoned months earlier, one I thought was long gone. The message wasn't just about restarting. It carried a new proposal perfectly aligned with the version of me I had been embodying. That wasn't luck. It was vibrational resonance. The broadcast had changed, and reality responded by delivering coherence. The beauty of synchronicities is that they bypass logic. They don't follow the straight line of effort equals result. Instead, they collapse timelines in ways the mind could never plan. This is why you can't force them. They arrive when your broadcast is consistent, when doubt no longer scrambles your signal. The field speaks a language beyond words, one built on frequency and presence, and synchronicities are its punctuation marks. Practical application. When a synchronicity appears, pause and acknowledge it. Don't dismiss it as chance. Write it down, reflect on it. Let the emotion of certainty sink deeper. Each recognition amplifies the signal, strengthening your alignment with the new self. For example, keep a synchronicity journal. Over time, you'll see patterns forming, proof that your leap is already unfolding. What begins as small signals eventually grows into undeniable evidence. But here's the subtle trap. Synchronicities aren't rewards to prove you're worthy. They're confirmations that you already are. The danger is obsessing over them, turning them into a checklist of "is it working?" That slips back into doubt. Instead, let them be gentle reminders, like road signs on the journey. The leap isn't in the sign, it's in the sustained frequency that brought the sign into being. And as these signals multiply, the real challenge begins. Holding the broadcast consistently, even when the external hasn't fully caught up, because the quantum field doesn't respond to quick bursts of coherence. It bends to constancy. The next stage isn't about chasing synchronicities, but about sustaining the signal long enough for the new self to become your default state. The greatest test of any quantum leap is not the jump itself, it's sustaining the new broadcast once you've tuned into it. Many can shift for a moment, feel coherence for a day, even hold presence through a single meditation. But the field doesn't bend to flashes of clarity, it responds to constancy. The sustained signal is what tells the quantum field, "This is who I am now." And when that identity becomes stable, timelines collapse into form. Think of it like training a muscle. One workout doesn't transform your body. Consistency does. One moment of feeling abundant won't rewrite your reality. Sustained abundance as a state will. The vibrational identity of the new self requires repetition, not performance. You don't receive what you ask for once. You receive what you emit long enough to become undeniable. The field mirrors persistence, not impatience. I've seen people practice perfectly for a week, broadcasting alignment, only to break coherence when results don't show up immediately. They return to doubt and the signal fractures. The truth is, the external world often takes time to catch up with the internal shift. That delay is not punishment. It's simply the field adjusting to the sustained frequency. If you quit too soon, you collapse back into the old self's broadcast. So, how do you sustain the signal? Rituals. Practices that anchor your state into daily life. Breathwork, journaling, mindful walks, even the music you listen to, all of these are broadcast tools. For example, writing a letter every morning from the perspective of your new self is not just journaling, it's broadcasting. Each word carries coherence into the field, strengthening your vibrational alignment. Small rituals compound into sustained identity. I recall a season where I embodied a new timeline by committing to simple daily acts. I dressed each morning as the person I was becoming, not the one I had been. I spoke differently, chose differently, even paused before every decision to ask, does this align with the new self or the old? Over weeks, the sustained signal became natural. Opportunities unfolded, synchronicities multiplied, and reality adjusted without force. Here lies the paradox. The more natural your broadcast becomes, the less you need proof. You no longer chase signs, because you've become the sign. The field responds not to your desires, but to your state, your embodied certainty. That's why the phrase holds true. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. The sustained signal is simply becoming the vibrational presence of the self you chose. And yet, even with this understanding, the path doesn't end here. Holding the signal long enough invites bigger questions. What's next? What other potentials are waiting in the field? Once you learn to sustain the new self, you realize the leap is not a single event. It's a lifelong process of alignment, coherence, and expansion into infinite timelines still waiting to collapse. So now the question isn't whether a quantum leap is real. The question is, are you living as proof of it, or are you still negotiating with the old self? Every breath, every feeling, every state you hold is a broadcast, and the field only mirrors back what you sustain long enough to become undeniable. Look around your life. Which signals are you sending without even noticing? Fear, doubt, or the quiet coherence of someone who knows the new self is already here? If you dared to embody that state for just 7 days, without collapsing back into survival, what would shift? What timeline would finally collapse into form? Most people will watch and nod, then return to the same loops. But you already know too much to go back. The leap has begun, and presence is the only way through. So tell me, which signs have you already noticed? Which synchronicities have been whispering that you're closer than you think? Share them in the comments. I want to hear your proof. And if you want to keep decoding these signals, if you're ready to learn how to sustain the broadcast until reality has no choice but to respond, subscribe now and turn on the notifications. Because this journey doesn't end here. It's only just beginning.